everybody, welcome back to my modern homestead. If you don't already know, my name is Janet. I'm not going to do a really long video today showing you okra because if you look here, you will see a video where I've already canned okra. But a little thing about that okra, when I canned that, we opened up the jars and I was heartbroken, y'all. My okra was slimy. And I've been on a mission trying to figure out what did I do? What made my okra slimy? And I think I know. So I'm going to share it with you, but I thought I'd show you how I'm getting started. Here on the stove, you can see I've already got a pan. And it's a small pan. I'm not doing a large batch of okra. I'm only going to get maybe 2 jars, if that, out of this okra. I've just been in the garden the last couple of days gathering up a little bit of okra, and that's all I've got because we don't have very many rows and it's just starting to produce. So I want to try my okra again. I've got to get this washed, but I just wanted to show you, you don't have to have a big canning pot to do okra, especially if you're going, or a lot of other things that you're going to water bath, especially if you're only going to do 1 or 2 jars. In fact, a lady here at our local farmer's market, if she's pickling something like okra, she doesn't can it. She puts the brine in boiling, puts the lid on, and that's it. She doesn't put it in a water bath. I remember my mom and my dad, they weren't together, but when they would do things like jellies or anything pickled, they didn't can it. They put it into a hot jar, put the very hot brine in, and that was that. They just let it sit on its own. And you can do that. That would be open kettle. But a lot of people want to go by what fall says for them to do. And my okra, I have always canned. So we're going to do it again today. We're going to try these couple of jars and see if the okra comes out slimy this time. So let's get started. Here is my pan. You can see these are my pint jars I have in here, and I am using wide mouth because it's easier to get the okra out of after you've processed it. Of course, you can use the regular mouth, the narrower mouth. They work. It's just not as easy to get the pickled okra out, but it's fine. I've done it plenty of times. And the water just will cover these jars. Technically, you're supposed to have 1 to 2 inches of water above the jar. So if that bothers you, make sure your pan is taller. It doesn't bother me because I know, I've grown up on it, you can can it or process it without processing it. So I'm not worried about it. So let's get some water in here, get it to heating, and then I'll show you what I put into my jars to pickle the okra. One of the things I forgot to tell you is because this is a regular pot, you can see a towel down in the bottom of it. That's so that the jars are not sitting directly on the pan because that will greatly increase the chances of your jars cracking. So if you do it this way, always make sure that you've got either some canning rings or a towel in the bottom of your pan so that your jars are not sitting directly on the pan itself. Okay, now we're ready to get going on the okra. Mine is not washed yet, so I'm going to wash it and pat it dry. And then I've got my seasoning mixes. I have my own recipe I like to use. But if you don't want to make your own recipe, just buy pickling spice. I put mine in a bowl like this. And in here, I have 2 tablespoons of mustard seeds, 1 tablespoon of that's not coriander. 1 tablespoon of coriander seeds, 1 tablespoon of red pepper flakes, and I may actually add more because I can't see the flakes in mine. And we also have 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds, 1 teaspoon of celery seeds, and my recipe originally called for 1 teaspoon of black peppercorn, but my husband really likes the flavor of this, so I just add 4 or 5 extra little peppercorns into each jar. And also into each jar, I like to add 1 or 2 cloves of garlic. And to make my life easy and to keep my sanity, I just buy it already peeled if I don't have a whole bulb of garlic. And I like to put pepper in mine, a hot pepper. I can use 1/2 to a whole jalapeno. You can put in, I've done half a habanero. Either way, it's not super, super hot once you can it, so I can actually eat the kind with a habanero, and I'm not one that can take a whole lot of spice or heat. But if you don't want to take a chance, use jalapeno or just leave it out totally. So let's get this washed. Okay, here we go, and I'm about to show you what I'm doing to avoid my okra being slimy this time, or at least I hope that's what it was. Now, I'll also tell you, if you are somewhere and you cannot grow your own okra and if you just don't want to grow your own okra, guys, I have done this with store-bought okra and it's just fine. I get the packs at the big box store of the okra that's wrapped in the cellophane. It's fine, y'all. Let me grab a napkin and dry these off. So that okra works just fine. And one thing I'm doing to avoid this okra or try to help it from not being slimy is I'm being gentle with it. I am not crushing this whatsoever. I'm just rolling it around and patting it dry. So there we go. Now, let's go ahead and grab our jars and start packing them. And we'll talk about that sliminess. Okay, y'all. Got my stuff. I went ahead and washed 2 lids. I love these lids. These are my 4-jar lids. And you guys, every time I've used these lids, not one single time have I had a lid failure. With my other name brand lids, you know, the one that begins with the B and a K and an H, I have been having such problems with lid failures. And I've never had that before until the last couple of years. But anyway, what I'm going to do is not get a hair in my jars. I'm going to take a big clove of garlic, and just drop it into each jar. You can crush it or break it a little if you want. I should have done that one. This one's a kind of smaller one, so I'll just add. I'm just going to slice it open just a little bit. I'm going to add a clove, a small one, to that other jar because it was a small clove. And that's fine. And there's no rules. You can do more if you would like, or you don't have to do it at all. But I'm telling you, it's good in this. Everybody loved my pickle okra. And the last time I made it, I did 2 batches, and they were cannerfuls, and every one of them came out slimy, y'all. And I was mortified. I was like, what am I doing? Why is my okra slimy all of a sudden? And I wouldn't make it for a long time because I was afraid it was going to be slimy again. And I was like, that's not good. I didn't enjoy it. My husband would eat it, but it wasn't the greatest. And I definitely wasn't giving it to anybody. So here we go. Let me show you where I think my problem was. But first, before I do, I almost forgot. Look, y'all, we wouldn't have pickled okra if we didn't put this in there. We're going to put a tablespoon of spice down into each jar. Just give it a good mix. Make sure we got a good mix of the spices. There's one there, and it's just so pretty, y'all. So pretty. And one there. Okay. And this actually has a good amount of peppercorns in it. I'm not going to add extra. It'll be fine. Okie doke. Now, if I was mixing this up from fresh, I would add extra into this. But because it's already got extra in this, I'm not putting extra in the jar. Okay, does that make sense? Clear as mud, right? Let me grab a knife and cut this. This is my jalapeno that's right out of the garden. Now, I don't want to use the seeds because I don't want this to set my mouth on fire. So I'm going to cut part of them out. If we leave some in the bottom, that's not that big of a deal. We want a little bit of spice, but we don't want it burning our lips off and our tongue off. Need our tongue. Can't talk without it. So, there we go. Don't use your bare hands. Use a glove. Do as I do. Do as I say, not as I do. And then we're going to cut it right in half. I know. Use a glove. You're going to burn your eyeballs out. I know. I hear you. I get it. I've done it. And I'm doing it again. Okay. So, half of a pepper in each jar. Now we're ready for the okra. And here, my friends, is where I was messing up according to my research. Those batches of okra I was doing, I was so concerned because some of them I was taking to a fair. I was so concerned about getting them packed tightly so that they wouldn't float, so that the judges wouldn't fuss about my floating okra. I packed them super tight into the jar. Now, you do want these tight, but don't do like I was doing. I put them way too tight. Oh, and sizes. You definitely don't want them any taller than your jar because you don't want to cut the okra pod. If you cut the okra pod, you're going to have slimy okra. This is as tall as you want. In fact, I'm going to trim this off a little bit. See, it's kind of woody there on top. I'm just going to trim it off. You want it to about a 1/4 inch, no longer than a 1/2 inch left on the top of that okra. So there we go. Now, I don't normally eat the tops anyway when I'm eating it, but some people do. Whatever. See, that's too long. So as you're packing, trim those tops. And as you pack, I like to turn one up and one down, just like you can see there, because it fits into the jar better. And we like all sizes. We don't like them really big. This one is getting too long because when they get big like this, they develop a very fibrous, woody texture, and they're hard to eat, and they're not pleasant, and you just don't want them in your jar. This size is perfect. Even these smaller sizes, the little bite sizes, we like them small like that. They're really easy to eat. They're fun to eat. A little bite-sized okra. So you just pack them in here tightly, but not so tight that you're crushing it. I might not even get 2 jars out of this. See, this one was getting a little too big. It may be too big. You never know. Sometimes they're too fibrous, sometimes they're not. So we'll use it. And that's all I am packing into here because I do not want to overpack my jar. Actually, I can get those little ones in there. I'm not going to have enough for my other jar. But you know what we can do? We can save those spices for next time. Or we can use a jelly jar. I went ahead and grabbed a jelly jar. So we can just go ahead and use up this okra. And I had to wash another lid. Unfortunately, it's that brand I don't particularly care for, but I'm out of the 4 jars, regular size lids. So what I'm going to do is just pour this pickling spice down into here and all over the floor apparently. Get that clove of garlic. I'm not worrying about going from a pint to a jelly jar as far as the amounts. Just go with it. It's not science, y'all. It's just cooking. All right, so let's stick these down into here. This was the very first okra I pulled off the bush. We just won't eat that end when we eat it. I don't eat ends anyway, but some people do. My husband does sometimes. Oh, that's perfect. And that's what you do in the kitchen, y'all. You just make it work. It'll be all right. All right. Now let me show you the brine. Okay, in my measuring cup, I've got 1 cup of water, and I'm going to add 1 cup of vinegar. I am using apple cider vinegar. That's my favorite, but you can use white. I've done both. Whatever you prefer. Okay, so that's a total of 2 cups. And this is for a small batch. You need to multiply if you need a bigger batch. Oh, my stars, y'all. I was not recording. I'm so sorry. Let me tell you what I did. I took the cup of vinegar, and I used apple cider vinegar. You can use the white if I didn't tell you. And to that, we added a tablespoon of kosher salt or canning salt. Make sure it's not iodized if looks matter to you, because if it's got iodine in it, it can make your brine cloudy. So I just used kosher salt. And 1 tablespoon of sugar. And hopefully that's all I need to do 1 batch, or these 2 little jars. And all I'm going to do is just let it get really hot. Let the sugar and salt dissolve. We're almost there as far as being dissolved. And I'll bring this right to boiling and pour it over my okra in the jars. Now, I love canning okra. It's so easy. Making the brine is the hardest part. And that's not hard, is it? All right, let's let this get hot and we'll be ready. Okay, we are at a boil, y'all. Let me get y'all over to the other counter and we'll bring the brine over to the jars and get them filled. All right, here we go. We're going to fill these jars to 1/2 inch headspace. Whoa, unless you're like me and you go way over, we'll fix it. But y'all, I will tell you, a lot of times I overfill these jars on purpose if I'm taking them to the fair, because if you don't, once they cool off, they're not at the correct headspace, because hot stuff shrinks when it cools off and your headspace is off. So that just doesn't make sense to me, but hey, it is what it is. Just go with it. All right. Okay. I think what happened is the okra just popped up and I don't know. Anyway, I'm just going to take my spoon, try to make sure there's no air pockets in there, especially in this jar. So a bunch of bubbles coming up. And don't crush the okra when you do that, because whatever is in the okra, I'm not going to get all sciencey with you, but the stuff in the okra, when it reacts with the liquid outside of the okra, it turns to mucusy. It has something to do with the sugars in it. So just be aware of that. And what I'm going to do is do my best to wipe off the rim of these jars, because this okra just doesn't want to stay down in there. And never when you're doing a video is it going to cooperate. That's all right. We're just going to work with it, because you're going to deal with it too in your kitchen. Just wipe those rims off as best you can. Work quickly so that that brine stays super hot. Get a lid on it. I am going to take some of that out. That's just too much. Let me grab a spoon, bowl, and just drain some of that liquid off. If this happens to you, it's not a problem. It's just a thing. You just deal with it. Okay. That's better. Wipe this rim off again. And if this jar doesn't seal, you know what? We're not going to sweat it. We're going to let it sit for a couple of weeks and we'll eat it first. Not worried a bit. I just tighten that lid on there finger tight. on both jars. And into the canner we go. Okay, slide that in there. Now, when I used to can with some of my friends who were from an Amish or Mennonite background, they did not even cover their jars all the time. What they would do is go right up to the rim of the jar, and that's how they filled their canner. So you guys, for so many reasons, I'm not afraid of doing everything right by the book exactly. But I don't just fly by the seat of my pants. I make sure I understand why canning books and instructions are written the way they're written. They're written to keep you safe. But I also understand using common sense and methods that have been used for centuries. Centuries? I don't know about that, but you know what I mean. For years, to preserve food safely for families, the way families have been doing it for years. Has science come a long way and better methods been developed and proven? Of course. But I think if people have been living on families for generations with canned food, I think there is some common sense that can come into play there. So I like to use a mix of both. And since this is one that people open kettle, and my own family has done it for years, many generations have done it for years, I'm not afraid to not have these jars covered completely. So we're going to let this go for 10 to 15 minutes. Your book says 15. That's the actual time you should use to follow it safely. My jelly jar is totally covered, but the pint-sized jar is not. It's right up to the edge of the lid. So anyway, we'll be back in just a minute. We're at a boil, so the timer has been set. Okay, friends, the timer has gone off, so I've turned off the eye. This is hot. Let's remove the lid. Make sure you open away from me. Let the steam escape from the back. Don't lay your lid flat on your counter. Create a suction, or flat on the stove. Okay, and what we're going to do is let the water in this pan come, well, wait till it's completely still. And then we will remove the jars. I'm sorry, I can't even talk. Okay, our water is still. Let's move these over to the cooling table. There we go, y'all. There is our okra. It was easy, simple, and quick, and you can do it too. I hope you enjoyed the video today. I hope you enjoyed the tips and got something that you can use. And I hope you enjoy your okra. And if you see this video, you know it came out right. If you don't see the video, you'll never know it. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful, blessed day. Until we meet again, may you be blessed. Love you guys. Bye-bye.